Welcome to the Northwest Victim Services new podcast. This is called NVS with NVS. So it's now Victim Shine with Northwest Victim Services.
Very nice.
And shine does not mean that we're glorifying anything that has happened to anyone who was a victim of crime. Shine means a quality of brightness, especially from reflected light. So this podcast will allow those affected by crime to shine their voices, their love, and their experience to help those who were affected by crime. So if you would like to be on our podcast, you can do so by contacting me, the Executive Director for Northwest Victim Services, at 267-808-0350. But today I'm going to kick off this podcast by sharing a story that people do not know about me. And I am sitting with Tanya Ellis, who is
I am the station manager at LaSalle TV at LaSalle University, and I am the secretary of the board of directors at Northwest Victim Services, and also tech support for
she got it all up and running for us today, so I'm excited. So this is not my area of expertise. This equipment would have been.
You got in front of the camera, out talking,
out front. Yeah, that's good.
So let's hear your story. Tell me about your story.
In 2002, my uncle, I had an uncle who was younger than me, and his name was Ronald Chandler. And he was murdered in East Division. So he was hanging with one of our cousins, and unfortunately he was engaging in some illegal activity, and he was selling drugs on someone else's corner, and my cousin was shot multiple times and killed. And my uncle, one of my mom's brothers, had to go to Temple Hospital and identify his body, and all of it's like a blur. And the funeral was unbelievable to me. It wasn't like your average funeral. It was...
How old was he at the time, or roughly?
He was about 25, 26 at the time. He has a son. I've never met his son. And I remember this funeral, and not in a good way. Like, it was his friends,
right?
But they weren't like dressed for a funeral. Like, I'm old school,
right?
So they weren't like really dressed for a funeral. So I was more aware of my surroundings, if that makes sense. Even though I was with my mom, my dad, and the rest of my family, but I was more concerned about my safety.
Right. Okay. I was gonna say so it wasn't. Yeah, the typical funeral that you were expecting to walk into.
It was not.
Because it was a different lifestyle?
It was. That's a good way of putting it. It was a different lifestyle for the males and the females that attended.
And how do you think that affects your perspective working in victim services now? Do you think I would think it would lend some additional empathy to victims and their families, or does it make you see their situations in different ways? Like, how does it affect what you do?
You know what's funny? I never put the two together.
No?
I no. So me helping the way that I do, it's just out of the kindness of my heart. Because again, it was a totally different experience for me. And then after the funeral was over, there's a line of cars, and they're blasting rap music, and it was so
not different. Like a funeral I had been to.
No, nothing at all. So but people don't really know that about me. I've never shared that story. And his nickname was Bo. And Bo was the most beautiful young man, the most beautiful kid. But it just so happened that my Pop, his father passed away. So when Pop passed away, Bo had to then go live with his mom. And then he lived with his mom for a little bit, and then he went to go live with Aunt Robin. And we lived with Aunt Robin, and Aunt Robin was in North Philly. And then he hooked up with one of my cousins.
Okay.
And when he hooked up with one of my cousins, the lifestyle changed. So I often think about that. Certain situations can change a person's situation and put them in a bad spot. But Bo was not a bad person.
It was just the circumstances that I guess happened throughout his life that kind of led him down that path instead of
I think so.
some other.
Yeah. And we were like so shocked that this happened to Bo, because again, he was not a bad kid. So I don't know whether Bo started selling drugs because he needed a place to live, or he needed a roof over his head, or he needed clothes. I'm not sure, and we can't go back and ask that question. I inquired about my uncle's case, I want to say maybe about 2 or 3 years ago, and then I was told that the shooters were apprehended. It was 2 shooters and they were apprehended. My family never knew that.
Oh. There's no detective in touch with...
Probably. I'm
okay,
not sure what the detective was in touch with his mom.
Correct.
And I've lost contact with his mom.
Okay.
So, but I was surprised, but I told my uncle and my aunts that the shooters were apprehended, and they were floored. Like, we never knew about a court case, and not saying anything bad about any detectives.
Right.
And I don't even know if the detectives are in touch with his mom.
Wow.
Yeah, so.
Wow. Very complicated. Every time you see on the news, like, this person was shot or whatever. I know I always think like, oh, that's awful. But you don't think about, like, the larger outcome and the rippling effects of what that has on not just their immediate family, but the extended members, the community, their family.
Yeah. And for somebody to have to go down and identify, like, their little brother. Like, my uncle had to go down and identify his little brother. Yeah. So I don't know if people actually think about the whole, like you said, the whole picture when someone's actually murdered. It just affects so many people.
So what you're planning to do on this podcast is talk about some of those stories and what people go through? That's
what I would like to do for the podcast, to be different. So I know there's a lot of podcasts for survivors of homicide, but what can we do to be different? And hopefully our podcast will stop another shooter from taking someone else's life. Thank you for joining us today.
Subscribe.